I'm Brittany, 34 years old, and I was sitting in my parents' living room in suburban Chicago, still recovering from surgery to remove a benign tumor from my liver. The incision throbbed with every breath, and I desperately needed the pain medication my doctor had prescribed. I looked at my mother, who was casually scrolling through her phone, and asked if they had picked up my prescription from the pharmacy. She glanced up with that familiar indifferent expression and said, "We got your sister Madison's vitamins instead." The room went completely silent. Before I continue this story about the ultimate family betrayal, please let me know where you're watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I discovered my own mother was willing to let me suffer in agony for my sister's profit. Growing up in our 4-bedroom house in Naperville, Illinois, I thought we were the picture-perfect American family. My father worked as a mechanical engineer at a firm downtown, pulling in 6 figures and always home by 6 for family dinner. My mother was a registered nurse at the local hospital, which makes what happened even more unbelievable when you think about it. She spent her days caring for patients, managing their pain, ensuring their comfort. Yet when it came to her own daughter, well, you'll see. Madison came along 2 years after me, and from the moment she arrived, the dynamic in our household shifted. Where I was the quiet, studious child, who brought home straight A's and never caused trouble, Madison was vibrant, demanding, and somehow magnetic to our parents. I remember being 7 years old, watching my mother's face light up when Madison took her first steps, a joy I never recalled seeing when she looked at my honor roll certificates. The differences started small. When I turned 16, I got a used Honda Civic that my parents bought for $3,000. It ran fine, got me to school and my part-time job at the bookstore. When Madison turned 16, she got a brand new Mini Cooper Cherry Red with white racing stripes. $28,000. My dad justified it by saying Madison needed a reliable car for all her activities. What activities? Shopping with friends and posting on Instagram. I worked through college at Northwestern University, taking shifts at the campus library and tutoring other students in calculus to afford my textbooks and laptop. My parents paid my tuition, yes, and I was grateful, but everything else was on me. They said it would build character, teach me responsibility. Madison dropped out of DePaul after 1 semester, claiming college wasn't for creative souls like her. My parents not only supported this decision, but converted our basement into a photography studio so she could pursue her dream of becoming an influencer. The financial disparities were obvious, but the emotional ones cut deeper. When I graduated magna cum laude with a degree in finance, my parents took me to Olive Garden when Madison hit 10,000 Instagram followers. They threw a party that cost more than my monthly salary. 50 guests catered food, a cake shaped like an iPhone. I stood in the corner that night watching my mother toast to Madison's bright future, while my own achievements gathered dust on a shelf nobody looked at. Despite everything, I loved my family. I told myself that parents just have different relationships with different children. Maybe they saw Madison as needing more support, more encouragement. I was the strong one, the independent one. I didn't need their validation, or so I convinced myself during those long nights, studying for my CPA exam, while Madison's laughter echoed from downstairs, where she was filming another makeup tutorial. I landed a position as a financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company right after graduation. The salary was good, $75,000 to start, and I was proud of myself. I moved into a small apartment in Lincoln Park, close enough to visit family, but far enough to have my own space. I dated occasionally, had a small circle of friends from college, built what I thought was a decent life. 3 months before the surgery, during a routine checkup, my doctor noticed something concerning in my blood work. The ultrasound revealed a mass on my liver, and for 2 weeks I lived in terror, thinking I might have cancer at 34. When the biopsy came back benign, I cried with relief in the hospital parking lot. A benign hepatic adenoma, they called it, likely caused by the birth control I'd been taking for years. It needed to come out, but I would be fine. I told my parents over dinner the following Sunday. My mother, the nurse, immediately launched into medical mode, asking about the surgeon, the procedure, the recovery time. For once, I felt like she truly saw me, truly cared. She promised they would take care of me during recovery, that I could stay in my old room for the first week after surgery. My dad squeezed my shoulder and said everything would be all right. Madison, for her part, barely looked up from her phone, but I didn't expect much from her anyway. The surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in March at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I needed someone to drive me home afterward, and my mother volunteered immediately. She would take the day off work, she said. She would be there when I woke up. She would make sure I had everything I needed. For the first time in years, I felt like her daughter, not just Madison's older, less interesting sister. The morning of my surgery arrived grey and drizzly, typical March weather in Chicago. I had to be at the hospital by 5:30 in the morning for a 7:30 procedure. The night before, I'd called my parents to confirm the plan. My mother would arrive by 6 to check me and stay during the surgery and drive me home afterward. She assured me everything was arranged, that she'd already taken the day off. At 5:45, I stood alone in the hospital lobby, watching the rain streak down the windows. I called my mother. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice groggy with sleep. She'd forgotten to set her alarm. Could I just take an Uber? She would pick me up afterward, she promised. My chest tightened, but I pushed down the familiar disappointment and ordered a ride. The Uber driver, a kind older man named George, must have sensed my anxiety. He told me about his own gallbladder surgery the previous year, how everything had turned out fine. He helped me with my overnight bag and wished me luck. A stranger showed more concern than my own mother. Check-in was a blur of forms and wristbands. I sat in the pre-op area dressed in a thin hospital gown, feet cold in the disposable socks. The nurse Patricia held my hand while they inserted the IV. She asked if anyone was waiting for me. I lied and said my family was parking. She smiled warmly and said I was lucky to have support. Dr. Harrison came by to review the procedure one last time. The tumour was about 4 centimetres, positioned awkwardly but accessible. He expected the surgery to take 3 hours. Recovery would be painful for the first few days, he warned, but he would prescribe adequate pain management. He specifically mentioned oxycodone, explaining that, with abdominal surgery like this, proper pain control was essential for healing. Without it, patients could develop complications. Pneumonia from not breathing deeply enough, infections from the stress on the immune system. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I checked my phone one last time. Madison had posted a story from a new brunch place downtown, mimosas and avocado toast. My mother had liked it. The anesthesia covered my face before I could process the hurt. I woke up hours later in recovery, disoriented and in more pain than I'd ever experienced. It felt like someone had set fire to my entire right side. The nurse, a different one named James, assured me this was normal and administered something through my IV that took the edge off. He said the surgery had gone perfectly, no complications. I would be ready to go home in a few hours. By 2 p.m, I was dressed in the sweatpants and loose shirt I'd packed, sitting in a wheelchair by the discharge area. My discharge papers included a prescription for oxycodone antibiotics and anti-nausea medication. James emphasized the importance of staying ahead of the pain, taking the medication on schedule, even if I felt okay. He'd seen too many patients try to tough it out and end up back in the emergency room. I called my mother. No answer. Called my father. He was in a meeting, but would tell my mother to come get me. 30 minutes passed. An hour. Other patients came and went, loved ones fussing over them, helping them into cars filled with pillows and blankets. I called Madison. She answered on speakerphone, the sound of music and chatter in the background. She was at a brand event for some skincare company. Mum was with her, helping her network. They'd be done in a few hours. The discharge nurse kept checking on me, her concern growing evident. Hospital policy prevented them from keeping me much longer without readmission. Finally, at 4:30, my father arrived still in his work clothes, irritation clear on his face. Not at my mother or Madison, but at me for interrupting his day. He helped me into his BMW in silence, didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't offer to stop at the pharmacy for my prescriptions. The ride home was agony. Every pothole, every turn sent shockwaves through my abdomen. I gripped the door handle and focused on breathing. My father listened to a business podcast about maximizing productivity. When we finally pulled into the driveway, he helped me inside and immediately retreated to his home office for another conference call. I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom alone, each step a monumental effort. The room had been converted into Madison's overflow closet, racks of clothes and ring lights crowding the space, but the bed was still there. I collapsed onto it, still in my discharge clothes, and let the tears come. Around 7, I heard Madison and my mother return home, their voices bright with excitement. Madison had been offered a partnership with the skincare brand 5 Posts for $5,000. My mother was helping her negotiate for more. They ordered Thai food. Nobody brought me any. That first night was hell. The local anesthetic from surgery wore off completely, and the pain became unbearable. I had no pain medication, no way to get it myself. Around midnight, I made my way downstairs, gripping the railing like a lifeline. I found my mother in the kitchen making herself tea. She startled when she saw me, as if she'd forgotten I existed. I asked about my prescriptions. Oh, she said she'd sent my father to get them earlier, but the pharmacy was closed. He'd go first thing in the morning. Did we have anything else for pain? Just some old Advil in the medicine cabinet. I took 4 and crawled back to bed. I didn't sleep. I counted the minutes between waves of pain, watched the clock mock me with its slow progress. I heard Madison come home around 2 in the morning from some influencer party, heard my mother get up to make her drunk food, heard them laughing about some guy Madison had met. By sunrise, I was delirious with exhaustion and pain. Wednesday morning arrived with cruel brightness. I woke, if you could call it waking, when I hadn't really slept, to the sound of my family having breakfast downstairs. The smell of bacon, usually comforting, made my stomach turn. The pain had settled into a constant throbbing presence that made it hard to think straight. My phone showed 8:30. Surely by now someone had picked up my medication. I made my way downstairs slowly, one hand pressed against my incision site, the other gripping whatever furniture I passed. The journey that should have taken 30 seconds took 5 minutes. When I finally reached the kitchen, I found a scene of domestic normalcy that felt like a slap in the face. Madison sat at the island perfectly made up, despite the early hour discussing her content calendar with our mother. My father read the Wall Street Journal on his iPad, occasionally making approving sounds. They all looked up when I entered, and for a moment nobody spoke. I must have looked terrible. I could feel the sweat on my forehead from the effort of walking, knew my face was probably grey with pain. I asked the question that had consumed me all night. Did you pick up my medication? My mother set down her coffee cup with deliberate slowness. We got Madison's vitamin supplements instead, she said, as if this was a reasonable substitution. The pharmacy said they could only fill 1 prescription at a time during the morning rush, and Madison needed her vitamins for that skin campaign. The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of family breakfast, but the heavy, suffocating silence that comes when something fundamental breaks. I stared at my mother, waiting for the punchline, the apology, the quick correction. But she just picked up her coffee again and took a sip. Madison laughed, that tinkling, practiced laugh she used in her videos. My vitamins are prescription-strength biotin and collagen, she explained, as if I cared. Dr. Chen prescribed them specially for hair growth. They cost $300 a bottle, but the brand is covering it as part of the partnership deal. Isn't that amazing? I looked at each of their faces. Madison glowing with self-satisfaction. My mother already turning back to Madison's phone to review a contract. My father, who hadn't even lowered his newspaper. I tried to explain, my voice cracking with desperation, that this wasn't just discomfort. The surgeon had been clear. Pain management was crucial for recovery. Without it, I risked complications, infection, pneumonia from shallow breathing. I could end up back in the hospital. My mother's response was practiced dismissal. You're being dramatic, Brittany. Women have been recovering from surgeries without narcotics for centuries. Take some Advil and rest. You'll be fine. The way she said my name, like it was an inconvenience on her tongue, hurt almost as much as the incision. I asked when someone would get my prescription. My father finally engaged, irritation clear in his voice. He had back-to-back meetings all day. My mother had promised to help Madison with a photo shoot. Maybe tomorrow if the pharmacy wasn't too busy. The casualness with which they dismissed my pain took my breath away. Something made me look closer at the kitchen counter. There, partially hidden under Madison's ring light, was a white pharmacy bag. My heart jumped. Maybe they had picked up my medication after all. I reached for it, hope flooding through me. But when I pulled out the receipt, my world tilted. 2 prescriptions had been filled yesterday evening. Madison's vitamins and my oxycodone, both picked up at 6:43 p.m. according to the timestamp. I held up the receipt with shaking hands, asked where my medication was. The silence stretched until Madison broke it with a nervous giggle. I needed some extra cash for that vintage Chanel bag I showed you, she said to our mother, not even looking at me. Tiffany's brother has chronic back pain and pays really well for legitimate prescriptions. It's not like Brittany actually needs them. She's always been such a baby about pain. The admission was so casual, so matter-of-fact that for a moment I thought I'd misheard. But my mother's next words confirmed the nightmare. Madison needs to maintain a certain image for her career, she said. These brands expect a level of sophistication. That bag will open doors for her. You can manage with over-the-counter medication. I looked to my father, surely he would intervene, but he just shrugged and muttered something about Madison being entrepreneurial. Then he left for work, pecking my mother on the cheek, ruffling Madison's hair, walking past me like I was furniture. The room spun. I gripped the counter to keep from falling. My mother, the nurse, the woman who took an oath to do no harm, had conspired with my sister to sell my surgical pain medication. For a handbag. The betrayal was so complete, so stunning that I couldn't form words. I managed to ask how long this had been going on. Madison, emboldened by our parents' support, admitted everything. Remember when you had those terrible migraines last year? The prescription strength stuff you never finished, I sold those too. And the muscle relaxers from when you threw out your back moving apartments. Tiffany's brother has a whole network. It's perfectly safe, everyone does it. My mother added, as if this justified everything, that they never took medication I was actively using. Only extras, leftovers, things I didn't really need. Except now I did need it desperately, and they knew it. They had looked at me post-surgical, barely able to stand, and chosen Madison's vanity over my well-being. I stumbled back to my room, each step agony, and called Dr. Harrison's office. The receptionist could hear the pain in my voice and put me through immediately. I explained that my prescription had been lost, careful not to implicate my family, because I couldn't bear the shame of the truth. Dr. Harrison was concerned but professional. He could write another prescription, but it would be flagged in the system. Insurance might not cover it. The pharmacy would ask questions, and it would take at least 48 hours to process because of the controlled substance regulations. 48 more hours. I hung up and curled into the fetal position, which hurt so badly I immediately had to straighten out again. From downstairs, I heard Madison starting her photo shoot, my mother directing her poses, both of them laughing like this was any other Wednesday. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of unmanaged pain and shocking revelations. Thursday morning, I woke to find Madison live streaming from the kitchen, unboxing her new Chanel bag for her followers. $3,000 she cooed to the camera, a gift from a special friend. She winked, and I knew she meant my pain medication had paid for it. My mother stood behind her, beaming with pride, occasionally chiming in about Madison's excellent taste. I couldn't eat. The pain made me nauseous, and the betrayal killed what little appetite remained. I survived on water and crackers I'd hidden in my old desk drawer years ago. When I ventured downstairs for ice, hoping it might numb anything, my mother commented that I looked pale. Maybe you should put on some makeup, she suggested. You never know who might stop by. By Thursday afternoon, the surgical site had become swollen and red. I knew these were warning signs of infection, but I couldn't drive myself to the hospital, and asking my family for help was clearly pointless. I called Jennifer, my best friend from Northwestern, who'd moved to San Diego after graduation. She answered on the second ring, heard my voice, and immediately knew something was terribly wrong. I told her everything. The surgery, the medication, Madison's confession, my mother's complicity. Jennifer was silent for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then she exploded. She called my family names I won't repeat, offered to fly out immediately, begged me to go to the emergency room. But what struck me most was her lack of surprise. She reminded me of every graduation they'd missed, because Madison had a recital every birthday they'd forgotten, because Madison had drama every achievement they'd diminished, because Madison needed attention. You've been in survival mode your whole life, she said. You just normalized it because it was all you knew. But Brittany, this is abuse. What they're doing is medical abuse. The word abuse hit me like cold water. I'd never thought of it that way. Neglect, maybe. Favoritism, certainly, but abuse. Yet here I was post-surgical in agony, while my mother helped Madison monetize my pain. If that wasn't abuse, what was Friday arrived with a fever? 100.3 degrees according to the old thermometer I found in the bathroom. Classic sign of infection. I finally received the text that my new prescription was ready. The problem, I couldn't drive, could barely walk, and nobody in my family would help. I tried calling an Uber, but when I stood up to get dressed, I nearly passed out. My father found me on the bathroom floor an hour later. For a moment, I thought he might finally help, but he just sighed and said I was making everyone uncomfortable with my dramatics. Madison had friends coming over for a collaboration, and I was ruining the vibe. Could I please keep it down? I laughed. Actually laughed, which hurt so much I started crying, which hurt even more. Here I was, his daughter, the one who'd never asked for anything, who'd worked for everything, who'd made them proud in every conventional way, and I was an inconvenience. Madison, who'd dropped out of college, who lived off their money, who sold illegal prescriptions, she was the star. I managed to call another old friend, David, who lived in the suburbs. He drove 40 minutes in Friday traffic to take me to urgent care. The doctor there took one look at my incision and immediately started antibiotics. You're lucky you came in, she said. Another day and you might have been hospitalized with sepsis. She asked why I hadn't been taking my pain medication. I told her it was a long story. David drove me to the pharmacy, waited while they filled the prescriptions, then took me back to my parents' house. He wanted to come in to give my family a piece of his mind, but I begged him not to. I wasn't ready for that confrontation. Not yet. That night, finally mercifully with proper pain medication, I slept. But I also planned. Because in those dark hours of agony, something had crystallized. This wasn't just about medication. This was about a lifetime of being unseen, unvalued, unloved. And I was done. Saturday morning, with a clearer head, thanks to pain management, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. I took screenshots of Madison's Instagram posts, including the ones where she basically admitted to selling prescription drugs. I found old pharmacy receipts, medical records, proof of pattern. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went into Madison's room while she was at yoga with our mother. Her laptop was open unlocked because why would she need security in a house where she was queen? Her messages were right there. Conversations with someone named Tyler discussing prices for various prescriptions. $50 per pill for oxycodone, $30 for Xanax, $20 for Adderall. Madison had built a nice little business, and from the timestamp she'd been doing it for at least 2 years. More damning were the messages with our mother. Not explicit approval, but clear knowledge. Reminders to be careful. Suggestions to only deal with people they knew. Advice on how to explain extra cash. My mother, the nurse, was coaching my sister on how to be a better drug dealer. I took photos of everything. Then I found something that broke me all over again. Messages between my parents from 3 days ago discussing my situation. My father suggesting maybe this would teach me not to be so weak. My mother agreeing that I'd always been too sensitive, too needy. Madison was easier, she wrote. She didn't complicate things with feelings. Sunday marked a turning point. 5 days post-surgery, I could finally think clearly through the pain medication haze. I sat in that cluttered childhood bedroom, surrounded by Madison's overflow designer goods, and made a decision. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to ensure they faced consequences for what they'd done. I started with research. Selling prescription medication was a federal crime. It didn't matter that Madison thought she was just helping friends. She was distributing controlled substances. And my mother, as a licensed nurse who knew about it, faced even more serious repercussions. She could lose her nursing license, face criminal charges, destroy the career she'd spent decades building. I called Jennifer back and told her my plan. She offered me a place to stay in San Diego immediately. Her apartment had a spare bedroom, and her tech company was always hiring financial analysts. It would be a fresh start 3,000 miles from this toxicity. I accepted without hesitation. Monday morning came with unexpected clarity. I drafted an email to my boss explaining the situation in vague terms: family medical emergency requiring relocation. To my surprise, she called me immediately. She'd sensed something was wrong for months, she said. My work had been excellent, but I seemed increasingly stressed. The company had a remote work option. I could keep my job, my insurance, my seniority, and work from California. The relief was overwhelming. I then composed a different kind of email, this one to the DEA tip line with all the evidence I'd collected. Screenshots, photos, dates, names. I included Tyler's information and the network Madison had mentioned. I made it clear my mother was aware and complicit. Then I sat on it, unsent a nuclear option in my drafts folder. Tuesday, exactly 1 week after my surgery, I felt strong enough to execute my plan. I went downstairs for breakfast, something I'd been avoiding. My family was surprised to see me looking better. Madison actually spoke to me asking if I could help her with her taxes, since she'd made so much money this year from her various ventures. The audacity was breathtaking. I agreed sweetly. Said I'd need to see all her income sources to do it properly. She handed over her bank statements without question, and there it was, deposits matching the dates and amounts from her drug sales. She'd been reporting it as consulting income, tax fraud on top of drug dealing. That afternoon, while Madison was getting her nails done and my mother was at work, I had a conversation with my father. I told him everything I knew, everything I'd documented. His face went white. He tried to blame it all on Madison and my mother, but I had the messages showing his knowledge and acceptance. I gave him a choice: support me in leaving peacefully, including helping me get my belongings from storage and covering my security deposit in California, or I would report everything to the authorities. He wrote me a check for $10,000 on the spot. Hush money, essentially, but I didn't care. It was less than they'd spent on Madison's car, less than her yearly shopping budget, but it would get me out and started somewhere new. That evening, my mother came home to find me packing. She stood in my doorway, arms crossed, and demanded to know what I thought I was doing. I told her I was leaving. She laughed and said I'd never make it without them. I'd come crawling back within a month. That's when I showed her the email to the DEA still in my draft's thumb, hovering over send. The colour drained from her face. "You wouldn't," she said. "You wouldn't do that to your own family." I reminded her that she'd chosen Madison's handbag over my surgical recovery, that she'd watched me suffer for days and felt nothing, that she'd known Madison was selling drugs and enabled it. Family. We hadn't been a family for years. Madison came home then shopping bags in hand and found us in a standoff. My mother tried to explain, but Madison just shrugged. She actually said, and I'll never forget this, that I should be grateful. My pain had contributed to her success. In a way, I was part of her brand now. The fact that she saw my suffering as her stepping stone was the final nail in the coffin. I gave them an ultimatum. I would leave quietly, no authorities involved if they met my conditions. First, they would never contact me again unless I initiated. Second, they would get Madison actual help therapy, something to address her clear narcissistic personality disorder. Third, my mother would attend ethics training at the hospital voluntarily to remember what medical care actually meant. Fourth, they would donate $5,000 to a chronic pain charity to maybe help someone who actually needed medication but couldn't afford it. They agreed to everything, of course. What choice did they have? But I knew they'd only follow through on leaving me alone. The rest was just to make them squirm, to feel a fraction of the powerlessness I'd felt. Wednesday morning, David helped me ship my belongings to Jennifer's address. 3 boxes of clothes books and the few personal items that actually mattered to me. Everything else from my childhood, the trophies, certificates, photo albums I left behind. They could throw them away or keep them. I didn't care anymore. As we loaded the last box, Madison appeared with her phone live streaming. "My big sister is abandoning us," she told her followers, fake tears in her eyes. "After everything our family has done for her, she's just leaving." The performance was Oscar-worthy. I looked directly at her camera and said 6 words. "Check your prescription bottles, everyone." Then I walked away. The drive to the airport was surreal. David kept asking if I was sure if I wanted to try to work things out, but I'd never been more certain of anything. At security, I turned back one last time, half expecting to see my family making a last-minute plea. But of course, they weren't there. They were probably already turning my room into Madison's personal closet. The flight to San Diego felt like traveling between dimensions. I left Chicago's grey March drizzle and landed in California sunshine. Jennifer was waiting at arrivals with a huge sign that said, "Welcome to your new life, survivor." She hugged me so carefully, mindful of my still healing incision, and I broke down completely. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone actually cared about my pain. Jennifer's apartment in Pacific Beach was everything my family home wasn't. Warm, welcoming, and genuinely concerned with my well-being. She'd set up the guest room with a proper recovery station, heating pad, medications, organizer, even a small fridge stocked with easy-to-digest foods. She'd researched post-surgical nutrition, printed out care sheets, done more in preparation for my arrival than my nurse mother had done in my entire recovery. That first week in California was about physical healing, but also about awakening to how abnormal my family situation had been. Jennifer's boyfriend Marcus came over for dinner one night and was shocked when I tried to apologize for existing in the space. "You live here now," he said, confused. "Why are you apologizing for getting a glass of water? It took me weeks to stop asking permission for basic needs. I started therapy with Dr. Morgan, a specialist in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. Our first session, I spent the entire hour justifying my family's behavior. Madison was the baby, she needed more attention. My mother was stressed from work. My father didn't know how to show emotions. Dr. What? Morgan listened patiently, then asked a simple question. If a friend told you this story, what would you advise them? The clarity was immediate. I'd tell them to run, to never look back, to recognize that being biologically related to someone didn't give them the right to harm you. But applying that logic to myself felt impossible. Dr. Morgan explained this was typical of abuse survivors. We minimize our own pain while recognizing it clearly in others. 2 weeks into my California life, Madison started bombing my email with increasingly desperate messages. The DEA had received an anonymous tip about prescription drug sales in her social circle. Tyler had been arrested. The investigators wanted to talk to her. Did I know anything about this? I didn't respond, but I did smile. I hadn't sent my email, but apparently Tyler's other customers weren't as discreet as Madison thought. My mother called my work number somehow, figuring out where I'd transferred. She left a voicemail accusing me of destroying the family, of being vindictive and cruel. Madison was under investigation. Her brand deals were being pulled. My mother was facing an ethics review at the hospital after someone reported concerns about a nurse's child dealing drugs. Their perfect life was crumbling, and obviously it was all my fault. My father sent a single text. Your mother and sister are handling things poorly, but you went too far. Family should protect each other. I responded with a screenshot of his message agreeing that I was too sensitive and needed to learn not to be weak. He didn't contact me again. Meanwhile, I was building something real in San Diego. Jennifer introduced me to her friend group, mostly young professionals, who'd moved to California for fresh starts. We did beach yoga on Saturdays, which helped tremendously with my recovery. Brunch on Sundays without anyone live streaming it. Hiking when I felt strong enough. Normal healthy activities with people who saw me as a whole person, not Madison's forgettable sister. 3 months in, I met Daniel at a hiking group for transplants to San Diego. He'd moved from Boston after his own family drama, a father who embezzled from the family business, and expected Daniel to take the fall. We bonded over our shared experience of family betrayal, but more importantly, over our determination to build better lives. Daniel was everything my family had never been attentive, considerate, genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings. When I told him about the medication situation, he was appropriately horrified. His exact words were that it was torture denying someone post-surgical pain relief. He couldn't understand how a mother could do that to her child. Neither could I anymore. Work was thriving too. Without the constant stress of my family dynamic, my performance improved dramatically. I took on bigger accounts, led presentations, even got promoted to senior analyst with a 20% raise. My boss mentioned that I seemed like a different person, more confident, more assertive. California was good for me, she said. I didn't tell her it wasn't the state, but the distance from toxicity. 6 months after leaving Chicago, I got a LinkedIn message from a mutual acquaintance. Madison had been formally charged with illegal distribution of controlled substances. The investigation had uncovered 2 years of sales, mostly to other influencers and wealthy college kids. She was facing potential jail time, though more likely probation and community service given her first offense status. Her Instagram had been deactivated, her partnerships terminated. The family's reputation in their social circle was destroyed. My mother had been suspended from the hospital pending investigation. While they couldn't prove she'd directly participated, the ethics board found it troubling that a medical professional had failed to report or prevent known prescription drug abuse in her own home. She was required to complete extensive retraining and was permanently barred from accessing the medication dispensary without supervision. My father filed for divorce shortly after. Apparently, the financial implications of Madison's legal troubles and my mother's suspension were more than he could bear. He'd worked his whole life for success and status, and now he was the guy whose wife enabled their drug-dealing daughter. He moved to a condo downtown, started dating a colleague within months. So much for family protecting each other. A year after that horrible week in Chicago, I stood on the cliffs at Sunset Cliffs in San Diego, watching the sun melt into the Pacific Ocean. Daniel stood beside me, his hand warm in mine, patient as always, while I processed my thoughts. We'd been dating for 6 months and he'd just asked me to move in with him. It should have been an easy yes, but trust didn't come easily anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me look. It was my father. Your mother and Madison need help, he wrote. Madison's probation requires family therapy. Your mother is struggling with the divorce. They need you to come home. I showed Daniel the message and waited for his response. He read it twice, then asked what I wanted to do. Not what I should do, not what was expected, but what I wanted. The fact that I had to think about it showed how far I'd come. A year ago, I would have been on the next flight, desperate to fix everything to earn their love through service. Now I deleted the message without responding. The next morning, over coffee and avocado toast that nobody was photographing, Jennifer asked if I'd heard about Madison's latest drama. Apparently, she'd started a YouTube channel about her redemption journey, trying to monetize her downfall like everything else. The first video was titled, "My Sister Betrayed Me, A Story of Sibling Jealousy." I actually laughed at the absurdity. Dr. Morgan had warned me about this phase. When narcissistic abusers face consequences, they often rewrite history to make themselves the victim. Madison would never acknowledge that she'd sold my surgical pain medication for a handbag. In her version, she was an innocent influencer destroyed by a jealous sister. My mother would never admit she'd chosen favoritism over basic maternal care. She'd tell people I'd always been difficult, impossible to please. Let them tell whatever story they needed. I had the truth, and more importantly, I had a life worth living. Daniel and I did move in together into a beautiful apartment in North Park with a view of Balboa Park. We adopted a rescue dog named Luna, who gave me the unconditional love I'd never received from my family. My California friends became my chosen family, showing up for birthdays, celebrations, and regular Tuesday nights just because. Madison's YouTube channel failed after 3 videos when commenters realized the inconsistencies in her story. She claimed I'd planted the drugs, but couldn't explain the text messages and bank records. She tried to return to Instagram under a fake name, but the internet doesn't forget. Last I heard, she was working at a department store, makeup counter, living with our mother in a small apartment after they had to sell the house for legal fees. My mother reached out once more, through a cousin asking if I'd consider being a character witness at Madison's sentencing hearing. She wanted me to tell the judge that Madison was a good person who'd made mistakes. I sent back a single sentence: a good person doesn't steal pain medication from their post-surgical sister. The cousin never contacted me again. The strange thing about cutting off toxic family is how people react. Some understand immediately, sharing their own stories of survival. Others, usually those with healthy families, can't fathom it. But family is everything they say. Blood is thicker than water. I remind them that blood can also be poison if it's infected. My success in California continued to grow. I was promoted again to finance director, making more money than my father ever had. I bought my own condo in Mission Hills, a small but perfect space that nobody else had claim to. Every piece of furniture I chose, every picture I hung was mine alone. No shrine to Madison's achievements, no reminder of my invisibility. Daniel proposed on that same cliff where I'd deleted my father's message. He'd planned an elaborate sunset proposal with photographers hidden in the bushes, but Luna chased a seagull at the crucial moment and he ended up proposing while I was trying to wrangle our chaotic dog. It was perfect in its imperfection, real in a way my family never was. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony at Balboa Park. Jennifer was my maid of honor, Dr. Morgan attended as the woman who'd helped me rebuild, and our friends filled the garden with genuine joy. I'd briefly considered inviting my family a moment of weakness, or maybe hope, but Daniel reminded me that weddings were for people who supported your union, not those who demonstrated they didn't care about your well-being. The day was perfect without them. No Madison making it about her, no mother criticizing my choices, no father checking his phone during the vows. Just people who loved me celebrating love itself. 2 years after leaving Chicago, I received a letter forwarded from my old apartment. Madison had written it as part of her court-ordered therapy, an apology letter to those she'd wronged. It was 3 pages of how hard her life had been, how much pressure she'd faced as an influencer, how nobody understood her struggles. At the very end, almost as an afterthought, she wrote, "I'm sorry about your medication. Mum said you didn't really need it anyway." Even in apology, she couldn't take responsibility. Even in therapy, she couldn't see me as a person who'd suffered. I kept the letter as a reminder of why I'd left, why I'd stayed away, why I'd never go back. Recently, a work conference took me to Chicago. I drove past my childhood home, now owned by another family. Kids played in the yard where I'd once sought refuge. The window of my old room where I'd laid in agony while my family ignored me now had rainbow curtains and a dream catcher. I hoped that child was seen, valued, loved. I didn't reach out to any of them while I was in town. But I did visit David, the friend who'd driven me to urgent care when my family wouldn't. He told me my mother had been asking about me, wondering if I was okay. She'd apparently told people I'd had a mental breakdown and disappeared. Madison claimed I'd stolen money from the family before leaving. My father said nothing about me at all, as if I'd never existed. David asked if it bothered me, these lies they told. I thought about it over deep dish pizza and beer comfort food I'd avoided for years because my mother always criticized my weight while praising Madison's figure. Did it bother me? No, because I knew the truth. My chosen family knew the truth. And most importantly, I knew my worth now. Sometimes the medication you really need isn't found in a pharmacy. It's found in the courage to walk away from those who would rather see you suffer than see you thrive. My surgical scars healed in weeks, but learning to choose myself, that was the real recovery. And for the first time in 34 years, I'm finally pain-free. The irony isn't lost on me. My mother, the nurse, took an oath to first do no harm. But she harmed me in ways that cut deeper than any surgeon's scalpel. Madison, the influencer, influenced me too, just not how she intended. She taught me that some people will take everything you have, including your pain medication, and still consider themselves the victim. And my father, he taught me that silence in the face of abuse is complicity, that choosing comfortable ignorance over uncomfortable truth makes you just as guilty. But they also taught me strength, though that wasn't their intention. Every moment of neglect built my independence. Every dismissal of my pain increased my pain tolerance, not just physically, but emotionally. Every time they chose Madison, they pushed me closer to choosing myself. In trying to break me, they forged me into someone unbreakable. I think about the Brittany who sat in that hospital discharge area waiting for a family that wouldn't come. I wish I could tell her that this abandonment was actually liberation, that the medication they denied her would become the catalyst for a life beyond her wildest dreams, that the family who couldn't see her worth would be replaced by people who never questioned it. Blood doesn't make family respect, love, and protection do. When someone shows you where you stand in their priorities, believe them the first time. Don't wait for the second or third or 100th demonstration of your insignificance. Don't hope that this time will be different. Don't sacrifice your well-being on the altar of their indifference. My story isn't unique. There are thousands of Brittany's out there, invisible in their own homes, suffering while their siblings thrive, questioning their worth because the people who should love them most barely see them at all. To you I say this, leave. It won't be easy. You'll doubt yourself. People will judge you. But on the other side of that decision is a life where your pain matters, where your achievements are celebrated, where you exist in full color instead of Madison's shadow. The last time I checked purely out of curiosity, Madison was working at a different makeup counter. Still living with our mother, still blaming everyone else for her choices. My mother was working night shifts at a nursing home, her hospital career over. My father had married his colleague and started a new family, probably making the same mistakes with fresh victims. They were surviving, but not thriving, existing, but not living. Meanwhile, I wake up every morning in my sunny California home, next to a man who drove 3 hours in traffic to bring me soup when I had the flu, surrounded by friends who celebrate my promotions like they're their own victories, working at a job that values my contributions. I have a therapist who helps me navigate the lingering effects of childhood trauma, but those effects diminish more each year. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're the forgotten child, the scapegoat, the one whose pain doesn't matter, please know that your story doesn't have to end like that. You can write a different ending. You can choose yourself. You can find people who will pick up your medication, literal or metaphorical, without being asked, without making you feel guilty, without making you pay in ways that cost more than money. And to my family, if you're watching this though, I doubt you are, since it would require caring about what became of me, know this, I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. I've expelled that poison from my system along with the toxic belief that I needed your love to be whole. I am whole. I am healed. I am happy. Without you. What would you do if your own mother, a medical professional, chose your sister's vitamin supplements over your post-surgical pain medication? Would you have stayed and fought for scraps of attention, or would you have chosen yourself? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of survival and triumph. Share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible daughter to visible, valued, and genuinely loved woman. Remember, sometimes the best medicine is distance, and the strongest thing you can do is walk away from those who see your pain as their opportunity. Until next time, choose yourself because you're worth choosing.